All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another one of my interviews here on Drip Talk with Blake Disnake Roberts. I have a very special guest with me today, something different. I usually don't do much interviews outside of wrestlers, but today I got somebody. He is a famous Chicago based comedian. He is also an actor, singer, slash musician, and also a recording artist. And he is a huge wrestling fan. And he did some color character stuff in the ring. He did some stuff here and there. And he's been seen on like Fox, NBC, Amazon Prime, and much more, as in movies, music videos. He is no other than David Vox Mullen. So we'll get him on in here and then we will start. Hello.
Blake the Snake Roberts. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be the first person on your show that expands your horizons outside of talking to pro wrestlers. This is exciting. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to expand out and do more interviews with other than wrestlers as well.
That's good. And at the end of the day, we both won't need, ibuprofen or pain meds when we're done. So this is good.
Yeah. All right, so I'll ask my first question.
Okay.
When did you start becoming a fan in wrestling, and what got you hooked into becoming a wrestling fan?
Oh man, that's easy. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I've been a big fan of pro wrestling. I can remember watching in Chicagoland, like when WWF back then in the '80s when I was little, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and Macho Man and Roddy Piper, or just everybody. It was just they were larger than life characters, and I instantly took to it, and obviously back in the day, you believe everything you see and whatnot, and it was so good, and I loved it. And then me and my friends when we were little, I wanted to be Hulk Hogan. My neighbor Steve wanted to be Macho Man or the Ultimate Warrior, and we'd just be out in the front yard, wrestling for hours and hours and hours, really doing ridiculous, stupid stuff, and like so many kids did in the '80s. And
Yeah.
yeah, I stayed with it for a long time, and then probably around high school, maybe a little earlier, like maybe like junior high, I started to see. Well, first off, I mean, do we keep a kayfabe, or are we talking? Like, are we being honest here? It's like, but like, yeah, when I was a
Anything
kid,
works.
when I was a kid, I remember watching a match with, I want to say it was like Mr. Perfect and Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and it was just a bad camera angle, man. But then I saw, like the work, and
Yeah.
and I got so hot. I got so mad. I was like, oh man, and then, everybody, oh, this is fake and blah, blah, blah. And, all the kids and all that. I felt kind of betrayed a little bit, like kind of finding out about, Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or whatever. And so I stopped watching it. I didn't want to watch it. No, I don't want to watch that. And then, as time went on, I finished high school, started, living on my own and trying to do my own, thing. And was just bored one day, and I just flipped on the TV, and I think it was, I want to say 1998. And I saw, at the time, I want to say it was Rocky Maivia having a match. Who was it with? I can't remember who. It might have been with Triple H, but he grabbed the headset from the announce table and started trash talking right in the middle of the match. And I thought that was so off the wall different than anything I had grown up to imagine. And at the time I was in a rock band, so I was a performer, and I was, getting into acting. And so I started to respect it on a completely different level. And I was like, oh, they're storytellers. They're storytelling, it's just like, when you're watching a movie or going to like a medieval times, Renaissance fair or whatever, like they're acting, they're trying to elicit a response from the audience. And so my opinion shifted, and I mean, The Rock was phenomenal back then. And then of course you had the Attitude Era and Stone Cold and Mankind, and Undertaker was still there. And it was just at that point I was like, okay, I get it, and I'm gonna dive headfirst into it. I started, I started making some money, so I would start buying tickets to the events. I'd sit ringside. I'd start, just oh my god, I loved it. I was a fan, and I have never stopped watching Full Throttle since then.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm guessing you watch like all the companies and keep up to date.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm definitely pro WWE. I mean, how can you not be though? I mean, it is what it is. But
Hmm.
absolutely, I mean, I watched other stuff. I during the wars, I was definitely pro WWE. So like, I didn't want to watch WCW, but I would still sneak over and see some stuff. And then of course, just the history of the NWA is fantastic. I definitely gave AEW a shot, as I was watching, and
Yeah.
I love the indie circuit, and especially knowing that wrestlers are for the most part independent contractors, and they work anywhere they can get work, and so it starts becoming less about brand loyalty and more about the talent, and so I've really enjoyed all different types of stuff. Like here in Chicago, we've got a bunch of organizations that I love supporting, and one of my good friends, Dave Hero, is the head of GLCW up in Wisconsin. We love him, and then of course OVW for all the wonderful stuff that OVW is and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, if it's a good product, if there's good story being told, then I'm on board for it. I don't care who you are, where you are. I just went to a Wrestle League Chicago show a couple weeks ago. It was fantastic, and it was my first time there. And yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, Raw's coming to Chicago next week. I'm probably going to find my way over there. Like, it's just I don't care. If there's wrestling, I'm down.
Yeah. And of talking about GLCW, that Blizzard Brawl 2023 was actually my first GLCW show, and
Okay,
I went there for Blizzard Brawl, and
Blizzard
it
Ball is
was
an
an
amazing event. Yeah,
yeah, and I went there, and it was an amazing show. I mean, with all the guests that they can bring in, and getting to meet all of the favorites, and yeah, like
and
one of
that's
my
all. That's all Dave Hero. I mean, Dave Hero has single-handedly nurtured all of those relationships with all that wonderful talent pool, and they all, when he asks, they come running, and that says a lot about Dave Hero. He's such a great guy that they're willing to do that for him.
yeah, that was awesome. Like Chris Van Vliet was in an appearance for there too, which was
Yep.
really cool. And I seen that you were there too.
Yeah, yeah, I was definitely. I've been going to Blizzard Brawl. Oh gosh, probably since 2014. I want to say. I think 2014, and then in 2015, Dave called me up, and he knew me as a comedian, and knew that I was capable of it, and he was the one who first convinced me to get a wig, and he asked me to come out and be Donald Trump when Donald Trump was first running for president. And so I went into
Yeah.
the ring, and I did all of the things, folks, all of the tremendous Trump stuff. They loved it. It was probably the best Trump they ever had. Okay. Excuse me. It was tremendous. And I just went in there, and I was just railing on like Scott Walker, who was the governor or the mayor of, I think it was the governor of Wisconsin at the time, who was running against Trump, and just trying to get as much heat as I could from the audience. And I had thousands of people just booing me. It was so fun. It was such a great experience. So not to keep name dropping Dave Hero, but I definitely give Dave the credit for giving me the courage to go do that. And ever since, I've just been running like crazy. So Dave Hero and Blizzard Brawl specifically, and GLCW has a special place in my heart, because of just the organization, the people involved. Everybody's just so good. I mean, Dave is such a good person, which is so rare sometimes in this industry. In any form of entertainment, to have somebody who is so decent. You should have him on instead of me. you know.
Yeah, GLCW is like one of the probably biggest companies here in Wisconsin for every
I would
out of
say it's
all the
probably one of
companies.
the biggest companies in the Midwest, certainly in the Great Lakes region for sure. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, Minnesota's got some big stuff going on, but that's further north. I mean, I mean, for Dave, I mean, and he was doing stuff in Chicagoland here too. Like I mean, he's everywhere, so he's got a great reach. and he's worked hard for that.
Yep.
I mean, they just celebrated, I think, their 25th anniversary last year. I mean, they're doing great, and obviously, I mean, I not to plug right away, but he is the subject of a documentary that we're working on because of all of his achievements and just who he is and how unique he is. That'll be coming out later this year. So
That's awesome. So, when you were younger and you were a fan of wrestling, did you ever want to get into wrestling, and did you ever scout possibly becoming a wrestler, and why didn't you if you
So no,
possibly did?
it's a great question. I at the time when I ever since I was little, I've always wanted to be a performer, right? And so I thought I was going to be, my dream was to be a rock and roll star, right? I wanted to be the next, like Bono from U2. Like I loved rock and roll and I wanted to do it. But I loved wrestling. I loved movies. I loved everything. So like me and my friends, we would still wrestle. And I kind of feel like I know where you're going with the question. So when I grew up in the south suburbs and I went to Oak Forest High School. I lived in Crestwood, and one town over was a town called Tinley Park. And in Tinley Park was a lot of my friends, and one of those friends happened to say, "Hey, let's." I can't remember what it was. His name was Adam, and we were all watching probably like SummerSlam or something that year, and we just started, and we were like just teenagers, and we just started, cutting promos on each other and started pushing each other around and just playing along, and we started wrestling in the dude's basement, and then we went out, took it outside, and then we were all wrestling outside, and then it was like, hey, what are you doing next weekend? Let's do it again. So then the next weekend we'd come over to Adam's house and we'd all start wrestling, and then their friend Mark would get involved, and Mark was like, hey, let's see. So all of a sudden we started creating like this weekly, every weekend we'd all, we'd go to like the White Hen or the 7-Eleven, get a bunch of Mountain Dew, and we'd just go like wrestle and put on these big shows in Mark's backyard. And eventually what started happening was more of our friends started hearing about us doing it. And then they all started coming in. And one of the people who started doing it was Phil Brooks, who everybody knows now as CM Punk. And he was a loud, foul mouth, son of a bitch. He just loved to talk trash, and he was, and so I mean, it was just one of those things, and clearly he took it way more seriously than I did. I did it a few times and got hurt, and I was like, oh, I know, I want to do music. I want to write music and sing to girls and stuff. That's what I wanted to do. But Phil kept pushing, kept going, and then him and his brother, and then some of our other friends, Billy and such, created what was soon to become the LWF, called the Lunatic Wrestling Federation, which was it was essentially an indie wrestling promotion that was created from the minds of these people. And they'd start doing shows at the Tinley Park High School gymnasium, and they'd let us, do that. And I'd come and be like a manager or whatever. And one of my best friends, JB, he was, I think he was Dr. X was his name. I think my ring name was, what was my ring name? I was DJ Sonic or DJ Wiz. I think I was very much into hip hop at the time. So like I was trying to be like, yo, kind of like the early John Cena, if you think about it. But not nearly as entertaining. But yeah, so we did that for a while, and I kind of went off on my own and kept doing music, and Phil just kept running. And the next thing I heard was, oh, wow, he's doing Ring of Honor. And, oh, man, now he's, getting picked up, ECW, WWE, and super, super proud of him and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just, that's how much it integrated into the Midwest, in Chicagoland when we were growing up. And yeah, now he can't, now I can't get the time of day from him, but that's, that's fine. That's the way it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I was gonna ask you, so you don't like talk to him much anymore now?
So I ran into him at a comic convention in Chicago a few years back, and I didn't even know if he'd remember me. And I walked up to him and I was like, hey man, I don't know if you remember me, and because I'm an idiot, the choice of words was so poor. I said, but we used to fool around in the backyard. And he looked at me and said, what? And I was like, no. And he was just razzing me real good, but he was nice. He was, he could have been a jerk, but he was totally cool about it and what like that. But yeah, he remembered, all the old guys and stuff like that. So it was fun. But that was it.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to him since.
Yeah, and if you do go to the Chicago show, you might be
He's gonna
seeing
be
him
there.
there.
Yeah, he's gonna be there. That they're announcing he's gonna be there. Yeah, I mean, I've seen him live plenty of times since then. But yeah,
Yeah. Out of all the wrestlers when you were younger, who was your favorite wrestler as a kid?
um, it's hard to say. I mean, I feel like it was. I mean, obviously, when you're a little kid, you love Hulk Hogan, right? I mean, you're made to love Hulk Hogan, right? Because I didn't understand.
Yep.
But as I grew up and as I looked back, I would probably say that Roddy Piper was probably my favorite, just on the essence of just how good of an intelligence that he works with, being such a heel like that. And honestly, ironically, no, no pun intended, but Jake was a fantastic, performer with his. He had all these big, larger than life characters, and Jake just kept it down here, and just looked right into the camera and just made it real clear. And he was scary, man. I mean, it was convincing, right? Yeah, I'm not so afraid
Yeah.
of the guy who's yelling at me. I'm more afraid of the guy who looks at me and is extremely calm because it's like he's done this before. Like I love that. But Roddy is the other one. Like Roddy is just like like if somebody was. What I liked about Roddy was the heel, but he was the heel who was always reactionary, right? Like he'd be fine to leave you alone, right? But if you said something that was a little off color to him, well, then all of a sudden he'd just, let me tell you something, he'd start shaking his head, and then he'd hit you over the head with something, or I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, I thought it was great. Roddy was great, and he'd always. I'm having visions right now of Piper's Pit with Morton Downey Jr. blowing cigarette smoke in his face, like he's just Mr. Downey. I'd appreciate it if you didn't blow no more smoke in my face. Like oh man, I love all that, and it's just like and I talk about this in my comedy, but like I love that it just encompasses all forms of art and entertainment. Wrestling really does homogenize all of it. It's like, oh, I like dancing. Well, there's dancing there. Oh, I like comedy. Well, there's comedy there. Oh, I like, horror. Well, there's horror there. Like it's all there to the pyrotechnics and music and all. I mean, I love it. I think there's nothing else in art that encompasses all those facets other than professional wrestling. There's things that get close, there's things that do half, there's things that do 60%, but professional wrestling is arguably the greatest art form. And I'm sure there's people who hear me say that and they're like, "Oh, you know what you're talking about." I do know what I'm talking about. I've been in all different forms of art, and I'm telling you, it
Yep.
encompasses all of it. And it's probably a testament as to why it's still going on today. You know what I mean? I mean, did you know
Yeah.
that George Washington and Abraham Lincoln used to be professional wrestlers? They used to perform. Like you can Google that.
Oh, really?
Yes, like that's how old the concept is. I mean,
Wow.
it's been around for centuries, and it's still going because we just love it.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. See, now you're going to Google it and you're going to find out.
Yeah. The only president I knew that did wrestling was Donald Trump. I mean,
That's true. Well, he's the only one that's in the Hall of Fame, I guess, right now. But anything is
yeah.
possible. We'll see what happens in the future. They are talking to Dwayne about running. And I think he will run in my lifetime. I do.
Yeah. I mean, that would be awesome to see that happen.
It'd be cool.
So, out of all of the different names that WWE had, all the different versions like WWE, WWF, WCW, and then there was WWE, ECW, and then ECW. Which one did you like out of all of them the most?
Oh, I mean, that's a great question. It's hard to answer clearly because everything had its own. Like ECW was amazing in its own right. Like what Paul Heyman did with ECW was unlike anything else that was available to us, right? Especially and if you got to keep in mind too, it's all the time, right? Like in the 90s, right? With if it wasn't the 90s, I don't think ECW would have worked. I don't think Extreme Championship Wrestling would have worked. I don't think being extreme would have worked outside of the 90s, right? And so it had to be the way it was. And of course, where they out of, like Philly and stuff like that, and like New York and just East Coast stuff. Like it was such a powder keg of entertainment, and I loved it. I was glued to it every time it was on. And then of course, when the WWE ended up conglomerating and buying WCW and buying up ECW and all that, I mean, it makes sense, like on a business perspective. I understand the need to do that. I wish they wouldn't have killed everything, but it is what it is. Um, but I think again, at the end of the day, I thoroughly enjoyed watching those promos during that WCW invasion and during the purchase of ECW and all of that. And I heard that through the years that there were rumors that WWE was funneling money into ECW to keep them going. So they kind of kept them alive, even though they didn't officially own them. They kind of backdoor owned them a little bit. So I mean, it's all at the end of the day, it's all WWE now, so it really doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
but I love pomp and circumstance. I love flash and pizzazz, and WWE just had it in spades. It really had it all. So I'm definitely a WWE dude.
Yeah. And this is just a random mention. Disco Inferno, you and him would have been like, you two would have like a great tag team. Like how you said your name was like DJ.
Yeah.
I think you two would have had a good tag team, or even like Disco Machine.
Oh,
That would
see,
have
that
been a
would have
good.
been cool. Yeah, yeah. If only I was 20 years younger, I would totally be down for it.
Yeah. So nowadays, who would you say is your favorite wrestlers now?
Well, uh, wow, that's tough. So, like in the Attitude Era, I was a big Triple H fan, huge Triple H fan. Like I, I, I didn't always love the heels, but there was something about the way he carried himself against Stone Cold, against The Rock, against Undertaker. I mean, it was like he was this constant. He had this attitude of, I am the game and I'm that damn good, and he backed it up. I mean, how many was he? Was he 14 times, 17 times? How many times has he been champion? It's like up
I'm
there.
not.
It's near Flair. I mean, it's up there. I mean, the dude has got
Yeah,
it. Him and Cena, I think, are pretty darn near close to 15, 16. But yeah, he was so intense, the cerebral assassin. I used to buy all his merch, and in fact, if you go back to, this is so embarrassing. If you go back to Backlash 2001, I think, where they were in Chicago, I was front row, and I was dressed as Triple H in the front row, and I may have had a few libations during the pay-per-view, and I kept getting up on my chair and standing up, and I'm pretty sure I ruined the pay-per-view because I kept standing up in the view of the camera. Like, I'm sure in the back there probably like, who's this asshole? Like, I'm sure it was probably pretty annoying, but dude, I'm so hardcore into it. And but yeah, so Triple H was my guy. But then as time went on, especially with like the current crop, who am I really liking right now? I really like LA Knight. I think LA Knight is definitely riding a rocket ship, and I'm here for it. I'm enjoying everything that he's doing. And I like Kevin Owens. I think he's cool because he just, for the longest time, looking at Kevin Owens is kind of like, anybody could do this. Like, anybody could be a wrestler. That's not necessarily true, but the idea is that it makes you feel like anybody could do it. He looks like me, like that's sort of a thing. And that's awesome. So when he does get over and he does win, like, it's so special for the audience, because it's like, just like when Stone Cold was running hot, it was, everybody wanted to tell their boss to go shove it. Right. Like, so everybody was living vicariously through Stone Cold. I lived vicariously through Kevin Owens. And now, I definitely enjoy and identify a lot more with the style of LA Knight, just that kind of attitude and charisma, and I think he's doing great. Who else do I like? I'm a big fan of. I know this sounds off the wall, but I'm a big fan of Nia Jax. I
Mm.
think she has such a unique look, and I love kind of how she is represented with her character, and of course Rhea Ripley. I mean, you can't say enough about Rhea. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, wrestling is so good again. You know, I've stayed with them the whole time, but I've definitely struggled to stay with them at times, right? But like right now, it is so much fun. It's so entertaining. My poor wife, when it's Monday and Friday and Tuesday, she's just like, "Oh my God, you're watching more wrestling." I'm like, "I love it. I love it. I can't get enough." Yeah, so like I love it, and you know, and God bless my wife. She doesn't love wrestling. She tolerates it. She doesn't hate it, but she tolerates it. Like I drag her down to Louisville and we go to see Al and everybody at OVW, and she enjoys the shows, you know. But I'm just a very lucky person that I get to do what I do, and I get to hang out and rub elbows with the people that I do, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I bet your wife is gonna love the week of WrestleMania, the five
Uh,
shows in a row.
she dreads WrestleMania week, and I get. And what's funny is I make a big deal out of it at home. I invite all my friends over. We all do a big watch party and stuff like that. So like she's always like, when is WrestleMania again? Like, oh, it's gonna be April. So it's like she's like, all right, because and God bless her, like she makes like snacks and food and stuff like that. She loves to do that and entertain, and we have great friends and stuff that come over and have fun. So it's definitely stressful for her, but it's a hell of a ride, you know. So and then I
Yeah.
kind of after WrestleMania I let her be for a while. You know, I don't do a bunch of pay-per-views every week, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So since you're not like a full-on wrestler,
Mhm.
what was it like taking your like first bump or still taking them to this day?
Well, I mean, I don't take many, but I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I've had my share, and you know, as long as you know you do it correctly, I mean, it's exhilarating, especially when your adrenaline is going, especially if the crowd is into it, and you know you're telling an interesting story. Um, you know, I don't want to say it doesn't hurt, but like the pain is equalized by the adrenaline and the rush and the excitement and whatnot. And you know, I can't imagine what it's like for these folks to do it, you know, 10-minute matches, 20-minute matches, God forbid, you know, Iron Man matches or whatever. But like uh, just the little bits that I get to do more on a comedic level. I mean, I'll do it as long as I can, you know, as long as anybody wants me to, as long as somebody, if somebody can tell you know, a fun, entertaining story with me, you know, getting my butt handed to me, you know, I'm happy to do it. You know, it's fun, you know, anything to make the overall experience good for the audience. But I haven't taken any real bumps in a while. You know, it's been a long time, but like I said, I'd be willing to do it. If anybody wants to, any bookers out there want to have a comedian come out and talk some trash and then, you know, take a choke slam or something, I'm down.
Yeah, that would be great. So for your when you did like your backyard wrestling,
Mhm.
what type of your finisher and signature did you use?
I didn't have like an official signature. It was probably like a weird modified DDT type thing. Um, you know, had I been watching in the late '90s, I probably would have done like a stunner or a pedigree type thing. But you know, I just a DDT type of a thing was one of my favorite things. So because
Yeah.
I loved Jake, you know, and I'd honor him too. I'd throw the you know the finger up, and you know, got to do
Yeah.
it.
And yeah, I got my podcast name from Jake the Snake Roberts. So I mean,
I guessed I didn't think it was Ric Flair, so it was pretty good.
so on to comedy. When did you start doing comedy, and when did you realize you could do it professionally and actually become successful in it?
Well, so before comedy, I was doing music, right? Because I told you I wanted to be a rock star. So that was my dream. After high school, I went down to Nashville, tried to get a record deal, all that stuff, and came back to Chicago, put a band together, and we actually did pretty well for ourselves. We've got I think 4 albums on Spotify right now, and we made a name for ourselves. The band was called The Slipstream, and we had an amazing time. It was one of the greatest moments in my life was touring the country singing for this band, writing music, producing music, having, looking out in the crowd and having people sing your lyrics back to you is you can't, imagine that. It's such a great feeling. And then, as many things do, just we got older and, we all got married, started having kids, and it just started getting harder to go out on the road and do it and stuff like that. And so we stopped the band kind of, for the lack of a better term, kind of broke up, and we all still love each other. We're brothers. I can talk to them to this day, but we're just not making music anymore. And I kind of got a little depressed for a while. And one of my good friends reached out to me and he said, Dave, you're always funny. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you should, start taking these comedy classes. And I didn't think about it in the moment, but when I look back, I realized, my God, yeah, if it wasn't pro wrestling, I was watching comedy. If I wasn't renting, VHS tapes of WrestleMania 2 or 3 or SummerSlam or Survivor Series, I was renting, Eddie Murphy or Howie Mandel or Robin Williams or Bill Cosby, I would love these guys. And so I started going, oh yeah, I'm a big fan of comedy too. So I did some research, and I was just fortunate enough that Chicago is such a comedy breeding ground. Famously, Second City is where the majority of every famous comedian you've ever heard of has come through, whether it's Chicago, New York, or Toronto, and that's talking the big names. John Candy, the Belushi brothers, and Chevy Chase, and Bill Murray, and Dan Aykroyd, and everybody from Saturday Night Live, and whatnot. And so it was like, yeah, I live here. I should take advantage of that. So I started taking classes and really started getting into the improv comedy scene first and foremost. And I really fell in love with that. And I started performing improv professionally, and was doing that for about 10 years. And then I started looking over at the stand-up comedy side and thought, well, I think I can do that, and started doing that and started eating some trash, and you got to pay your dues just like wrestling, and started coming up in that. And then, so now I do both. I do improv, I do stand-up, I do acting for sketch, I'll do, web series, I do movie stuff, whatever, television. And yeah, in retrospect, it's like I was always destined to do this. And it's funny because my passion is still music. I still love music. It's still very much a part of me, but comedy just pays better. It just does.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've just been super fortunate enough to be running and doing that. And then I found a way to kind of marry my love for pro wrestling into the comedy, because I was fortunate enough to meet different people. I'll give you the long story short. I was doing podcasts as a comic, and I created my own podcast distribution company called the DVMPE. And I was at a Comic-Con, I had a booth, and I was promoting my company, and up walks Ken Anderson. And we locked eyes with each other, and I obviously knew who he was, right? And so he walked up to me and he's like, hey, you do podcasts? I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm like, you're Ken Anderson. He's like, yeah. I go, I'm a big fan, man. He's like, oh, cool. Yeah, I want to do a podcast. And I was like, oh, shoot, another pro wrestler wants to get into the podcast game. And he kind of saw my eyes gloss over as he was talking to me, and he could tell that I was like, oh, here we go. And he goes, whoa, no, I want to do a podcast about all the stuff you're not supposed to talk about. He wanted to talk about religion, politics, sex, just all the stuff that you're not supposed to talk about, and he didn't want to talk about wrestling. And I thought, okay, that's different. I'm excited. I like that. So he and I exchanged contact info, and I wasn't sure if he'd really, follow up. And then like a couple weeks later, he called my phone up and he's like, hey, it's Ken. We met at Comic-Con. I was like, yeah, man, how's it going? And he expressed, again, his desire to do this type of show. And I said, dude, not only do I love it, but I want to do it with you. And he was like, yes, that would be great. So he and I started the Push the Button podcast. And it was, every week we would talk about a hot button issue. And, and one of the most interesting things is that I happen to be a Christian and he is an atheist. And so one of the things that he and I both probably for different reasons, but we both had the same goal, which is let's show the world that we can come to agreement on things. And so that was the whole concept of the podcast, was to kind of, he wanted to complain about things that tick him off. I wanted to complain about things that tick me off. And then we would both kind of find that common ground every episode. And every single episode, the answer was always the same thing, which was, we just need to be more educated. The public needs to be more educated. We just need to learn and be more open-minded. And it was cool. So through Ken would want to bring on different guys from the business, right? So we'd have EC3 on, we'd have MVP on, we'd have who else did we have on? Just tons of people would come on the show, and we'd have MVP on talking about Black Lives Matter, right? And we'd have I think we had EC3 and Robbie E and a bunch of the TNA guys, and we were just talking about what was the one? We had Nick Aldis on, and we were talking about Brexit and the European, financial markets. Like it was off the wall, and it was so surreal. And they're still available to the public if they want to go find it. It's out there right now wherever you get your podcasts. Push the button with Ken Anderson and David Vox Mullen. It's some really interesting stuff. Now, what you'll find is at the time, it was right at the beginning of like the Trump campaign. So like we had a much better opinion of Donald Trump then than we do now, but it was very interesting. And I think one of the episodes we had, it was called the Teflon Don. We just couldn't get over all the stuff he was pulling and how he was still seemingly getting away with it. And we talked about all that. It was so neat. And if you ask Ken now, some of his platform positions are very different than they were back then. And I think that's a testament to him as a person, admitting that, you have to recognize, and one of the things he always said was, I reserve the right to change my opinion when presented with new evidence. And I'm like, that's what we all need to be, right? So anyway, through Ken, I was introduced to all these other guys, from the locker room. And Ken he'd come to the Midwest and he'd say, hey, I'm going to be in Indiana. Do you want to come? I'm like, sure. And he'd bring me backstage, and hey, in Chicago, whatever. So I started meeting everybody, and he'd introduce me to different cats and Al and everybody, and always a great time. So anyway, fast forward to before the pandemic, Al Snow and I were talking, and he had expressed a desire to start doing comedy. Mick Foley was doing comedy, and Al called me one day because Mick was bringing him to Australia to do this giant comedy event. And so he wanted to just kind of run some jokes past me. And I was flabbergasted with how good the jokes were. Not to besmirch Mick Foley, but when I saw Mick do stand-up, Mick doesn't really tell jokes in the traditional sense. He more just kind of like tells road stories, which is great. I love that. But as a comedian, I'm kind of like, but you're not really telling jokes, right? And so when Al was like, I want to do comedy, I was getting the Ken Anderson eyeglass again, like, oh, another wrestler wants to try comedy, right? But no, but I've got these jokes that I've written. And so I was like, all right, let me hear them. I was blown away, man. I mean, Blake, Al's jokes were great. And I'm like, dude, you sound like somebody who's been doing it for as long as I have. Like, this is so good. And he's never like professionally done comedy, right? So we started talking. And so he was like, all right, well, I'm going to do this thing in Australia. He came back and had just the time of his life. And he said he had the crowd, on their feet, and they were loving him, and it was great. And so I said, man, Al, I would love to do comedy with you. And he's like, oh, that'd mean so much. I was like, oh, I'll come down to Louisville. We'll find a club. We'll do an open mic. We'll just, we'll get up and just do some stuff. And then the pandemic hit. Everything shut down. As a comic, I was screwed. I mean, I couldn't get work anywhere. I just sat at home writing a bunch of jokes that only worked for the first month after the pandemic was over. And then, they weren't funny anymore. But so then I was at an event. I think I was up in Wisconsin. It was in the summertime. So it was something that they did in the summer, one of the summer events. And Al was there. And so we all went back to Dave's house for like the after party. And I kind of cornered Al and I said, you know what, we talked about this, and then we put it on the back burner. And my career had gotten to a point where I had some leeway, some opening where I could start doing some dates. And I said, what do you think about us putting a show together where it's you and me, and I bring my fans, you bring your fans, and we just kind of do like this mishmash of wrestling theme and comedy, and just giving people who um, love wrestling, who don't maybe go to a comedy club, give them kind of that kind of comedy experience, and then people who love comedy who don't really know anything about wrestling, kind of introduce them into that world. And that's exactly what we started doing. And so Al and I said, let's do it. We started booking all these dates. Last year we hit a bunch of different cities across the country. This year we got 3 or 4 dates lined up already coming up. And it's been a whirlwind. And then, of course, with the release of Wrestlers on Netflix, Al has sort of gotten like this new popularity boost, which was funny too, because I remember before Wrestlers came out, we had done a show in Washington, D.C., and it was like very small, like very intimate room, and which is that's the gig, right? And I kind of felt like, oh, Al, like, please trust me, like we'll get more, you know. But then after Wrestlers came out, the very next show we had, we sold over 400 tickets. I mean, it was off the wall. So it's like, it's nothing new to Al. I mean, Al has experienced the popularity boom, the dwindle, the popularity boom. I mean, Tough Enough came out, he got a big boom again, and it happens. And so, yeah, it's been a dream come true for me, really, because I'm such a big fan. And what I love so much about Al is he kind of treats me like, I don't want to say like a father figure so much, but he's got such great knowledge. He's a wealth of experience and knowledge. And I don't care if you're a wrestler or a comedian or an improv or an actor or whatever, Al has found a way to make everything make sense, right? And he's real. And if you talk to Cody Rhodes, or if you talk to Maven, or anybody who has specifically learned under Al, they'll all tell you, man, the man has such a mind for what the business is. Not even just the business, but also just your character and development. And he really does. I've seen how he treats those kids down in OVW, and it's so amazing. And, he sits down with me, and we go back and forth and talk about the comedy business and entertainment in general. And Al says things like a guy who's been doing comedy for 50 years. I mean, it's amazing. And I've taken some of the things that Al has taught me, and I've inserted that into my own career, and I've seen my own independent career explode because of that. And so I give Al all the credit for that. And so it's just been a wild ride of doing these shows. And yeah, we're going to keep doing them as long as they'll let us,
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. So now to go more into music.
Sure.
When did you start doing music, and what made you want to start singing and becoming a musician?
Music was there since childbirth. I mean, my mom was a musician, my family were musicians. So ever since I was born, there was always music in the house, and my mom plays a beautiful guitar, and she has a great singing voice. And she would play, for me growing up. And then I had like a little piano, like a child's piano, like 1-2 octaves. And she used to like teach me how to play scales. Like even before I think I could talk, she was teaching me how to play piano. And so like just music became, I think because I was so small and she was, exerting that on me, I think it became another communication tool. So music became another language. And so it was always there for me, no matter how good or bad my life was at any given moment, grade school or junior high or high school or whatever, I could always go to my room and pick up the guitar, or I could get on the keyboard and start playing the piano, or I'd start writing music. And I think I wrote my first song when I was in junior high, and I've been writing music ever since. To this day, I still write music. I still release albums. I still, just do it because I love it. But yeah, I think I gotta say, music is it's an expression, right? Like it's a way to get your message or your point across without necessarily even having to use words. I mean, there's instrumental music that you can know what that person was thinking. I mean, you go back and listen to Mozart or Beethoven, like you know what these men were thinking when you hear some of their music, or you don't. And I'm just thinking it because I'm insane or crazy or whatever, but they're talking to me, man. But but yeah, it's such a neat form of expression and art, and I think it's beautiful. And I mean, anybody who watches a film or a TV show or wrestling or whatever, I mean, let's take it back to wrestling for a minute. I don't care who you are in the ring cutting a promo. When the lights go out and the purple lights come up and you hear that single gong of the bell, it invokes emotion, right? Like
Hmm.
that is the whole point. That is the whole point of the music. When John Cena's music hits, or when Stone Cold's glass breaks and the music hits, or Cody Rhodes or whatever. And I love that right now they're really focusing on the music again in pro wrestling, to the point where even the fans are in on it now. Like now they're singing along to Seth, and I mean, it's so emotive, and it's such a neat, like I said, communication tool that we have that we can share with each other. And especially for people who like maybe have a difficulty socially, and like they have a hard time talking to people. Like, well, like when I was a kid growing up, we had mixtapes, right? Like if you liked a girl, you'd make a mixtape for her, right? Like you put all these different songs that conveyed your feelings, and you just give her the, and then as you get older, you do CDs, and now it's just here's a playlist for you, whatever or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've always loved music, and I always said, I'm an entertainer through and through it. We we always try to identify something, or have identities. For the longest time, I was a musician. I'm a musician. Then it became I'm a comedian. I'm a comedian. No, I'm an entertainer. And as long as I recognize that I'm an entertainer, then nothing is off the table. I could sing, I could act, I could wrestle, I could do stand up, I could, do ballet. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I will do anything I can. If there's a group of people who are willing to spend their time and their dollars to pay attention to me for any period of time, man, that's such a special gift. And it's a big responsibility and an honor to be able to deliver for that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Same goes with
And
podcasting, right? Like for you, like what you do. I mean, that's there is an unspoken agreement between you and your audience that, hey, if you care enough to just pay attention to what I'm saying, then I will do my best to say something good and entertaining and keep you out, keep you going for another week or however often you do your show.
yeah, and about music, I actually sing myself, and I'm in choir, and then I play trumpet in my band.
Nice,
So
excellent. When you say you play
yeah,
trumpet in your band, is it like your school band, or is it like do you have like an actual independent band that you're playing trumpet in?
my school band, but would be I do want to like start doing a band outside of the school band, and like make a band with my friend that's really into music a lot,
Yeah,
and
that'd be
he
great.
wants to make a band, and so we would like to do that. And so
We'll do it and then record some stuff and send it to me. I'd love to listen.
yeah.
Yeah, I did choir too, all throughout junior high and high school. All 4 years. I think I actually lettered in choir, which I didn't know you could do, but apparently I did. But yeah, no, choir was a great thing for me, and I had a great choir music teacher. He did both choir and band, so he was the music teacher overall. His name was Jerry Engelberg. Great name. We just called him Mr. E because Engelberg is too hard to say. But but yeah, man, if it wasn't for people like him who gave me the courage and instruction to get out there, and he put me up on stage, and he would do special showcases, and he'd have me do solos and stuff, like that's a big deal, man, giving these kids an opportunity to get that taste of performance and whatnot. And what it's like to sing in choir and perform in concerts and stuff like that. It's such a great thing. I mean, how cool is it that we live in a world where we can do this? That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And I'm like the singer in choir that just I'm kind of like nervous singing, and I'm kind of quiet, and I'm not really one that sings like loudly.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you had like any advice for me to get out there more on my
Well,
voice.
sure. Well, I mean, the obvious advice would be sing louder. I mean, you said yourself, you're like, "Oh, I don't sing loudly." Well, start doing it. I mean, it's yeah, I get it. Like, it's scary. The beauty that you have. So I'll jump off for a second, and then I'll bring it back. You'll see how I bring it back. So when I started doing improv comedy. The thing about improv that's so cool is you get up on stage with no preparation. You have no idea where the funny is going to be. But you have the luxury of having two or three or four or five other cast members who also don't know what we're doing. But the agreement is that we're going to trust each other, and our goal is to support each other and make each other look as good as we possibly can. So as an improv actor, if I'm worried about making sure my scene partner looks good, if I'm not worried about if I look good, I'm just going to worry about making sure he or she looks good. And the agreement is he or she is going to not worry about how they look. They're just going to worry about making sure I look good, and we're carrying each other. Then it becomes this beautiful thing where we convince the audience that we know what we're doing, right? And I can't tell you how many pro wrestlers I've spoken to where that's exactly the same thing with wrestling. It's, the two individuals or the tag team or whatever. It's you're spending your time making the other individual look really good. And if they're doing the same thing where they're not focusing on themselves but focusing on making you look good, right? Then it works. When I do stand-up comedy, I'm all by myself, right? I don't
Yeah.
have the luxury of other castmates to lean on. So if something I'm doing isn't working, oh man, you want to talk about anxiety. And believe me, I've eaten crap. I've definitely crapped the bed plenty of times on stage. That's part of the gig. So I take all that to bring it back and say, if you're in your choir, there's no reason that you need to be quiet, right? Because you are supported by everyone else, your guys and gals next to you. They're all singing the same notes with you. They're all singing, with you. Lean on that, lean on that and be like, sing as loud as you want, because they're there with you and they're singing right there with you. And as long as you're singing as loud as they are, no one's going to hear your one voice, even if you make a mistake. I mean, it's in order for choir music to work, it's the conglomeration of everybody, right? So I say, don't be afraid. Definitely. Well, you know what? No, be afraid. Be afraid, but do it anyway, right? That's the real thing. I mean, that's one of the big improv lessons I was taught in the beginning is it's okay to be afraid. Be afraid. It's terrifying to get up there and do that. Yes, acknowledge that. Don't lie to yourself and go, "Oh, I'm not scared." I've been doing this I've been entertaining audiences for probably 40 years, and I still get scared before I come up on stage, And it's just kind of like I just tell myself, you know what? I know I'm scared, but I do it anyway. I've been doing it for so long. You just do it anyway, and that's very much what it's all about, And once you realize not only can you do that, you work through the fear and you use the fear as energy, right? And then you can do it in front of thousands and thousands of people if you need to, which is, a neat experience, or just, an auditorium at your high school or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, but sing louder. Just do it.
Yeah. So, generally, what is your favorite music to listen to in your spare time, and your favorite music to play usually?
So, well, listen to I like pretty much everything except country. and even then there's probably a few country songs I'll tolerate, but for the most part anything else I'll listen to. Rock and roll, hip hop, rap, jazz, I even like ambient music and instrumentals and retro and 80s music and 90s grunge, and I like it all. Heavy metal, I listen to everything. I you can find me listening to, you know, Iron Maiden at the same time as I'm listening to U2, or I'm listening to, Katy Perry, or, like, I don't care. Like, I will listen to anybody if I enjoy it. I like Britney Spears, right? Like, I don't care, right? Like, um,
Yeah.
I, you know, it's weird that society can, like, oh, you shouldn't like this or you shouldn't like that. That's dumb. Just listen to what you listen to, right? Listen to anything that makes you happy. Anything that makes me feel something I like. That's why I will tolerate a few country songs, because some of them are pretty good, but for the most part, it's
Yeah.
never my go-to. I like loud. I like loud. Give me something loud,
Mm-hmm.
But playing music, I tend to play more kind of poppy alternative rock. Like I don't really write hip hop. I don't really write jazz. Um, I definitely don't write country. but but yeah, I mean, and then ironically, the last album I released last year was a cover album where I just did other people's music, which it's called Undiscovered, and the C is in parentheses, so it's like a play on the word covered and the copyright logo because it's not my music, it's somebody else's. But
Yeah.
but that was fun. But yeah, and I'll probably do more albums later down the road and whatnot. But right now, I'm really focusing on trying to do as much as I can with comedy and touring and stuff.
Yeah. Like my favorite type of music would probably be pop, and then I really like rock and roll, like Kiss, and then I like Slipknot. Those
Okay,
Kiss is
yeah.
my favorite band,
Oh,
and
excellent.
Slipknot's like my
So
second.
so I went to go. So my wife and I went to go see the Broadway musical Mamma Mia in Chicago, and sitting right behind me was Paul Stanley from Kiss. And so during the
Wow.
intermission, I turned around and walked up to him and shook his hand, and I was like, "So, wow, like what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I'm a fan of ABBA." He's like, "Well, so am I. So now we're here for the same reason." I was like, "Okay, Paul, this is cool." But it was neat, I was sitting right in front of Paul Stanley from Kiss, and it was a neat experience. And but I love Kiss. I love Gene Simmons. I think he's an amazing marketing genius. The guy is phenomenal. If he led a master class on how to market yourself, I would be the first in line.
Yeah, Gene's just the fact that you sitting in front of Paul, and that was awesome. And then,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
Gene
a neat
Simmons
experience.
is my favorite.
Yeah, Gene's definitely in the group. Gene's my favorite. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
got a great
and
story.
yep. And I actually got to see Kiss for their final road tour in Crandon, Wisconsin recently.
The final farewell tour, right?
Yep,
Before they do
this
another
most
farewell
recent.
tour next year.
Yeah,
They've been saying
probably.
goodbye since I was in high school.
Yeah,
No, I
and
you know
now
what? I've
Gene's.
never had the chance to see them live other than on TV. Um, that I would love to see them live. I mean, and they I'm sure they put on one heck of a performance. Such
Yeah,
a
the
big band.
performance was great. Yeah, like they had confetti, they had fireworks, they had like rises where they rised Eric Singer up on the piano. Then
Oh
blood
wow.
from Gene is was
Right.
incredible.
Yeah, no, those guys, they pretty much wrote the book on theatrical musical performances. They really did. I mean, you think about the bands that came after them, like Alice Cooper and Iron Maiden and Slipknot and Guar and even Ozzy, I mean, just a lot of that style really comes from inspiration from Kiss.
Yep. So if you had like an entrance theme song for yourself, either
Oh,
for wrestling or to come in comedy, which band or singer would you like to have entrance you to the
wow.
ring or to the stage?
Well, I mean, my absolute favorite band of all time is U2. So, and as far as I know, they've never done anything for any pro wrestlers. So that would be kind of neat to have them do an entrance theme for me if I was a wrestler or even as a comic. Ironically, as a comedian, you do get brought up to music, and so a lot of comedy clubs will ask you, what song do you want us to bring you up to? And I'm always trying to find the right song, and to this day, I haven't quite found it, so I don't know what it is. But when I do, I'll have to get back to you on that. When I do, I guarantee you that'll be the song that I always come out to. Ironically, Al, when we do the show, the tag team comedy show, Al loves Ain't That a Kick in the Head by Dean Martin. So we always come out to that, um, which makes sense, because of the head thing. Um,
Yeah.
but it just works perfectly because it's a testament to kind of Al's generation and that style of music and whatnot. But so he's got a great theme, but I don't have one yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. Maybe you can help me think of something. Maybe it should be Kiss. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be great. So back into kind of the wrestling
Mhm.
scheme here. if you got the chance to become a wrestler, if you wanted to like start doing a little bit of wrestling and train, who would you want to be trained by to become a wrestler?
Well, I think I'm contractually obligated to say Al Snow. Um, and that's a joke. But honestly, I mean, the one thing that was beneficial for me, and I learned early in the comedy career, is take as much as you can from as many different teachers as you can. You know, a lot of the teachers are going to say the same stuff, but it may click differently with one guy or the other gal or whatever. Um, so I would want to be trained by Al. I would want to be trained by Ken. I want to be trained by Dustin. I'd want to be trained by just everybody. Honestly, I would listen to anybody. If Chavo wanted to, I mean, he's doing great with his stuff, and I would listen to anybody. If you could teach me something that I could use to better inform my ability as a performer, I would take lessons from anybody. Anybody. Then that's the one thing that Al and I always talk about, because I often, and ironically, Ken Anderson has a school up in Minnesota, the Academy, and every once in a while he'll bring me up to do like an intensive improv comedy workshop with his students, because improv and acting is such a major part of character development and whatnot, which is a major part of pro wrestling, and he sees the
Yep.
value in that. So he brings me up to his school in Minnesota, and I get to spend a weekend with his students, and we really focus in on, acting and scene work and character development. And we really dig in and get heavy and get deep and really just think about it. And it's so much fun. And then I always tell them, don't just listen to me, find other, comedic voices, without comedy. I think some of your favorite superstars wouldn't be what they are. I mean, there's such a big comedic element because there's comedy in real life. Comedy is the observation of real life. I always say that I find that there are certain actors who are really good, but they can't do comedy. But almost every comedic actor can do drama. And if you think of your most famous dramatic stars, they were comics. You know what I mean?
Yep. Who improved you to? Okay, I don't know where I'm really going with this
That's
question.
okay. Just
Like,
feel it out, man. Just feel it out.
who improved you more on in like comedy?
Um, I'm trying to think like who helped me get to like the next level, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of where I'm going with that.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was any one individual person. Um, I mean, I can name off, names of people who trained me. I mean, at Second City, Dave Rosowski was a big instructor. Michael McCarthy, Susan Messing. These are all names that you may probably aren't aware of, but in the comedy world, they're the big gurus. They're the ones who everybody knows. I never got to learn under Del Close, who was like the father of Chicago improv because he passed away. But I've been trained by people who were trained by Del Close, and so that'd be like, if I couldn't learn from Dusty Rhodes, but I could learn from his kid, like that would be a big deal, stuff like that. Um, I mean, there's so many. I've had so many instructors, I can't even name them all. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a mixture. It's a constant evolution of things, and it's not even just comedy instructors. I'd watch certain comics, the way they carry themselves on stage, and I take a little bit of that and go, yeah, I like some of that, what they're doing. Not all of it, it's them, but I'll take a little bit of this, and this comic over there, I'll take a little bit of that, or this comedian over there, she's doing this, I like that, I'll take some of that. And you kind of do that. I mean, wasn't Hulk Hogan famously like a mixture of like Ventura and Buddy Rogers and superstar Billy Graham? Like he kind of took a little bit of all those guys, right? Like that's kind of what it is. And so that's what I think a lot of us are. We're all inspired by elements of things, and we bring that into our stage presence.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but the answer is I don't know who one person was, but it's been a lot of people.
Yeah.
including like Ken Anderson and Al Snow and other wrestlers who have talked with me about performance, and that's all a big deal.
Yeah, of course, because any type of performance will help you in any type of performance areas that you do.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Hmm. Is there anybody that inspires you family wise to get into like music, comedy, and then into being a wrestling fan?
Well, I mean, so I would say my late uncle, who passed away a few years back, he when I was a little kid growing up, he was always very loud and boisterous and comical, and he was always the center of attention in my family, and I always just adored him. And I think that was definitely an early inspiration in my life to want to kind of be the center of attention, and because he always cracked me up. I mean, any he would he would get the family's attention. He would crack jokes, but he would also like look you right in the eye. So it's like, you're pulling you into it, and that was a major part of it. And so now I try to pull people into my comedy, and I try to lock eyes with the audience and let them know, like, I'm telling you this joke, like I really want you to experience this. And the same with music. My mom, is obviously probably one of my bigger inspirations. My grandmother was always very sarcastic. My God, my whole family is very. We're Irish, Chicago and South Siders. I mean, we're just super sarcastic. And my God, when somebody would die or pass away, which was a lot. I mean, it's pretty common in Irish families. It's common in all families, but in Irish families, the way we deal with grief is it's drinking and comedy. Like we crack jokes, we roast each other. I mean, that's we don't speak ill of the dead. No, we'll speak really ill of the dead. Like that's how we cope. It's how we deal with our grief. We don't cry, we laugh. And I think because of that, that's been a major reason why I've been able to be so successful with learning comedy as quickly as I did and getting it into practice and going on the road and doing it.
Yeah. And talking about Irish, I'm like a big fan of the Ireland stuff and Irish. I used to, because I do like my backyard wrestling on my trampoline,
Uh-huh.
and I have a persona that I do right now as Mr. Hardcore Psycho Shredder Von Dyke, and I'm a
Wow, that's
big
a name.
yeah. I got because I looked up Amsterdam names and I seen Shredder, I seen Von, and I seen Dyke, and I just put them all together, and I'm like, okay.
That's a great
And
name.
yeah, and I'm into like the hardcore type of wrestling, and I kind of want to do that. Not like deathmatch kind of stuff, but like hardcore.
Sure.
And but before that, I was the Irish King, the Beast, and I
Ah,
used to do the persona of that, and I had like Irish flag makeup on my face, and I had like whole Irish.
the green, white, and orange.
Yep, and I
That's
used to have
cool.
like
I
the
like
whole
that.
outfit. Yeah,
Oh, you should show me a picture of that sometime. That was pretty cool.
yeah, I definitely will. I'll send you photos after.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I love it, man. So, like, just not to interview you per se, but like, so you is your dream to pursue a career in professional wrestling?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah,
Well, you're in a
my
great area. If you're in Wisconsin, you should definitely, you know, you should reach out to Dave Hero, ask him where you should train.
yeah, I was actually talking to at Blizzard Brawl TW3 because he just started a
Yes,
school up in Green Bay, and he said message him, so I did, and I actually might start doing something with him in this summer.
he is
But
a
I was
great
also
guy.
yeah, I was also thinking about doing it in Minnesota, but like I don't know about the
Well, like I
traveling.
said, you gotta take a little bits from everywhere. Go to Green Bay, get some foundation there. Go up to Minnesota and get some foundation there. And yeah, the travel's tough, but that's if you want it, and I don't care who you are or who you talk to, whether it's Al or Ken or Dave or anybody. If you want it bad enough, you're gonna drive. You're gonna do it. And that's how you do it. And honestly, I spent hours in the car, in the planes, on the road, you know, and that's that's the part that nobody really wants to talk about. But but you have a lot of time to think and a lot of time to kind of what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And it's to this day I still do that when I'm in the airport getting ready for a flight. I'm writing jokes in my head, or if I'm in it sitting in the car, I'm taking an hour's long drive to this club or that theater or whatever. And it's just you just yeah, that's what it's all about. So don't let that be a deterrent for you.
Yeah. So, because I was thinking about, because I don't have my driving license yet, and I was gonna, I'm starting that really soon, and so I was gonna possibly start out with TW3
Sure.
and have
Yeah, start
that
local.
start, yeah, and start a little bit little, and then I would get that experience from him and bring that experience to a bigger uh, school as Mr. Kennedy, and when I can drive, and then I can drive there myself and show them.
Brother, just get to work, get started. I mean, you could be the next Cal hero, right? He started right in high school, right? Um,
Yep.
dude, I would love nothing more than to see you a few years from now and see one of your matches. You know, I'll shout for Shredder Van Dyke. Let's go, Von Dyke, Shredder
Yeah.
Von.
So I know you mentioned this and talked about this earlier about the backyard wrestling with CM Punk.
Mhm.
So if you could tell more on how did he get into the backyard wrestling, and how did you scout him out to come
Yeah,
part of it?
I didn't scout him out per se. He was just, he was a friend of a friend, and we were just calling our friends up, and they were just coming over every weekend. And this is just what we did. Instead of hanging out in front of the grocery store, we would just hang out in Sean's backyard, or Mark's backyard, or Adam's backyard, and we would just wrestle. We would just put on shows for our friends, and then eventually it just grew.
Yeah. And did you have like any other bigger names that you guys brought in for that?
So I was already out before the LWF like became what it became, right? That would be Billy Wack, a Chicago guy. Billy Wack was the guy who really kind of built that up, and so I was out of it by then. I was just that's the things that my friends were doing. You got to remember, to me, and remember earlier on I mentioned like that's when you know, I started kind of pulling away from wrestling at the time. Um, and I wanted to focus on music, so that's kind of the route that I went into. But I remember playing different like clubs and getting a kick out of fact of like my band would be playing at a bar or a club, and I'd go to the bathroom and there'd be a flyer for LWF wrestling. I'm like, oh, those guys are still doing it. That's awesome. Like that's how I would look at it. So I wasn't super involved um, with anything beyond its infancy.
Yeah.
But I would go to their shows, and then I was involved with Pro Championship Wrestling, PCW, which was another Chicago organization. I met was PL Myers, the Shot to the Top, and I think it was a book signing for China at like a Kmart in Elmhurst, and I was back in the wrestling at that time as a fan, and so he and I hit it off really well, and he became a fan of my bands, and then he would come to my band's concerts, so then I would reciprocate and come to his wrestling shows. He was like a wrestling manager, and so he would start pulling big names in. He'd bring in Roddy Piper, he'd bring in Bret Hart, he'd bring in the Road Warriors and Mr. Perfect and stuff like that. So I'd get to meet these guys this way and that way, and what I always liked was being introduced to a lot of the wrestling talent, not so much through the commercial fan avenue, but rather, hey, I'm a guy who knows a guy or whatever. So it becomes like you get kind of a different interaction with people. And I've always felt very special and fortunate and blessed to be able to have these opportunities to meet people like that. And, they're just like everybody else, they're normal people. They're just hustling like I am, like you are, like we're just trying to get people's attention. And once you recognize that, they become very easy to talk to and accessible.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. So, were you ever in like any type of drama or acting or plays in school when you were younger to help out with to do what you're doing now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was in musicals and plays since I was little. I mean, loved it, loved it. I mean, I was in West Side Story. I was in Grease. I was in um, what else was I? I did poorly in Romeo and Juliet. you know, um, I mean, it was very much a part of it. And I would do stuff like at my church, and I would do festivals, and um, yeah, I mean, acting again, it all boils down to just entertainment. Just any opportunity that I've had. My goal has always been, not only do I want to do a good job, but I want to do better than anybody else expected I could, and hopefully better than anybody else. Period. And try to. Steve Martin has a very famous quote that I love, and that's Steve saying, "People always come up to me, Steve. People always come to me asking me, like, how do I do it? What do I do? Do I get an agent? Do I get a manager?" And Steve says, "Forget all of that. Just be so good that they can't ignore you. If you're really focusing on being really, really good at what you're doing, then they will come." And I can't tell you how true that is. No matter how hard I tried to convince people to pay attention to me, no. When I started really being good at acting, really good at comedy, really good at music, really good at performing, that's when the people started coming, because they want to know. They want to know what you're doing. They want to see what you're doing, because what you are doing is so different than everything else they see. And that's the key.
Yeah. And talking about musicals, I was actually in my first ever musical for school, which was this year in February. And so I never thought I could do musicals because I'm not someone that has a good memory and
Sure.
remembers. So the lines are the thing that scared me the most. That was
Oh yeah.
something that worried
Learning
me the
lines is
most.
is hard. It's awful. To this day, I hate running lines and stuff like that. It's very much like cramming for a test, right? So like
Mhm.
as an actor, I'm given, like a script, or they call them sides or whatever, and you cram them, you study them, you burn them into your head, and then after you've performed it, they're gone. Like I can't remember half of the stuff. Like especially with improv. With improv, you just you open your mind and you just try to find the jokes right there, right then. I cannot tell. I've done so many shows. I can't even tell you. I did a show at Second City in Chicago last Friday. I cannot tell you anything that I did. I can't remember anything that I did, because it was crammed for that moment. Get it in, get it out, and then you let it go. So when you cram for a test or whatever, like I think you're using a different part of your brain to like memorization, and it's like fast memorization for quick response, and like it's a different part of your brain to really know things, right? So I feel like you tap into that memorization part of your brain. I'm getting deja vu right now. We're talking about brain stuff, but um, but yeah, you tap into that. You learn it enough to get it out, right, and then it's gone. So
Yeah.
but you said you already did it, right? What was the musical?
It was Anything Goes.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge one.
Yeah. And that
Did you
was my
like it?
first ever play. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I was actually a sailor and then a photographer. I had small parts, but
Yeah,
I prefer the small parts other than big parts because you don't have much lines. I mean, I did have plenty of lines, but it's something that
there's no small
I,
parts, man.
yeah,
Paul
I
Heyman
like the
isn't
part.
wrestling, but if you watch Paul Heyman, he's doing every bit of the work that the guys in the ring are doing. It's there's no small parts, man. That's awesome. I'm so happy that you got to do that. That's fun. Keep doing it.
Yeah, and I actually didn't sign up to do it. The a couple weeks after my music teacher actually asked me to be part of it because I originally didn't sign up. They had one last year to spam a lot,
Oh yeah, I'm familiar. The Monty Python
and
thing.
yeah, I didn't do that. But then this year I didn't sign up originally, so she asked me, and I'm like, sure. So
So that goes to what we were talking about, right? So your music teacher must have seen something in you that was good enough that she was like, if you're not doing it, I want you to do it, right? So that's huge.
yeah,
Now just do that with wrestling school.
yeah. What do you consider to be a weakness and then a strength in comedy and as a musician?
A weakness in comedy. would be worrying about whether or not the audience is going to think you're funny. Um, yeah, how do I word this? My worst comedy was when I was too worried about, do they like me? Do they think I'm funny? Are they laughing at my jokes? The moment I turned that switch off and said, and the strength or the greatest strength is I said, no, no. If it's funny to me, then it's funny. And if I go up on stage and I have the confidence that these jokes are funny, and I turn it into, this stuff is funny. Maybe you don't get it, but it's funny, and I'm going to keep telling these jokes. Then all of a sudden, the audience goes from, we don't like you, to almost feeling left out. Like, oh man, maybe he is funny and we don't get it. Like maybe we need to catch up. And that's the strength, is just plow through it, keep going, show the audience this is funny, this is comedy, this is good stuff. And it works. It does.
Yeah.
That being said, I will say, as a comedian, the audience isn't the problem, right? Like the audience doesn't want to hate you, right? The audience wants to like you when you come out on stage. The fear the audience has is they're not sure if you like them. So I find that the faster I can let the audience know, not only is it okay to like me, but I like you too. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and I don't just mean that, oh, it's just so great to be here. No, no, no. Like you have to really be honest and be like, no, I am so excited to be able to get to do this with you in the audience, like, and the moment you can let them feel that, the faster you can let them feel that, then their guard comes down. And then they're like, okay, this guy's cool. Let's have fun. And then it's just a party. It really is.
Yeah. And then this next question, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the same question as this, but for wrestling, if it makes sense. What do you consider to be a weakness and a strength as a fan of wrestling?
Um, well, as a fan, I would say our job is to enjoy the magic, right? We're all, Al famously says, everybody's in on it. We're all in on it. But I think the biggest weakness a fan has is the expectation of a wrestler should do it this way or a wrestler should do it that way. That's you shouldn't go into a show thinking that. You should go into a show with an open mind and go, I will support, I will cheer, and I will boo if I'm supposed to, right? I will give you that. Just, for a lack of better technical term, entertain me. Show me something I haven't seen before. Don't give me what I expect. Show me what I want without knowing that's what I wanted. That's the magic.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Is it hard traveling from show to show for like comedy, wrestling, and when you did music shows? And what is the worst or best thing about traveling?
Um, I mean, it's fun. It's exciting. I'm enjoying, looking at my life going, oh, I get to do this, right? That's the exciting part, because I grew up watching my favorite rock stars and wrestlers and celebrities going to the airports, going on the bus, doing the driving. But at the same time, especially if you ask my wife, I hate long road trips. I hate them. Oh, I get so antsy and I can't stand it. So on the few road trips that my wife is nice enough to drive, it's fun. I like to have her company. Otherwise, like if I'm by myself, oh, I hate it. I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and it was a good 2-3 hours away in another state, and I was just like, oh, just driving me crazy, and it's just by myself. And there's no amount of music that makes me happy. No podcast I can listen to that keeps me occupied. Like it's just, I just hate the road. So it's a weird. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love the excitement of going, I get to do this thing that I love. And people are giving me money to do it, which is great. But at the same time, it's like just all the downtime of just getting there, getting there, getting there. You know, if I'm doing a if I'm shooting if I'm filming something, you know, waiting for the cameras to get set up, waiting for the lights to get ready, waiting for, you know, and then you get up and you do your little 5 minute bit, and then okay, well now you got to wait again, you know, you got to wait again. Same thing with performances. It's like, oh, we get to the city we're going to be in, now you got to wait in the green room for 2 hours or whatever. It's like, oh, you know, I mean, it's just it's a lot of waiting to just do this one exciting thing. Or, you know, if you're doing a weekend as a comic, you do a weekend in a city, like they put you up in a hotel or whatever. You're in the hotel. You're just in the hotel. You don't talk to anybody. There's nobody to talk to. You're just there sitting, waiting, waiting, waiting. And then you get to do this thing you really get excited about and have a lot of fun and interact with people. And then as soon as it's over, it's back to waiting and waiting and waiting. So it's a weird love-hate thing, but that's entertainment, man. So I wouldn't have it any other way though.
Yeah. What was your first ever in-ring or wrestling moment you physically took part of, and how did you feel going into that first wrestling in-ring uh, moment?
The very first in-ring thing I did was I sang the national anthem for PCW's first annual show. They called it Dream Night. And it was like their WrestleMania. And what was interesting was at the time, we didn't know this, but at the time, Billy Corgan was in the audience. And he approached me afterwards and complimented me on my singing and said I had a really good voice. And you know, I was appreciative. And again, it's just interesting, like to look back and go, wow, I just sang the national anthem for the guy who's going to eventually run NWA. Like it's just it's weird, you know. I mean, I definitely give pro wrestling, or at least my love for pro wrestling, a huge credit. I wouldn't be the performer that I am today without the world of pro wrestling, whether I was directly involved or not. Just it's I wouldn't be where I am. Ironically, I was talking about that documentary we're doing about Dave Hero. It's called The Hero's Journey, a pro wrestling story. And the thing that Dave says in the trailer is, you know, pro wrestling. Everything in my life that I have is because of pro wrestling, and I understand that. Like he means that, and it's a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I can't wait to see that, well, for Dave Hero.
Yeah, me too. We're literally in post production right now. We're doing the final edits on everything, and I think we're going to have a premiere in Wisconsin. So we'll definitely let you know about that. I think we're going to be. I can't specifically name the theater just yet because we haven't done like the paperwork and the contracts and agreements, but we're going to have a film premiere at a specific theater in Wisconsin. So we'll definitely let you know. And we want to see you for the red carpet. We'll bring you out.
Sweet. Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
So, where was your first official on stage comedy show at, and how did you feel going into that first comedy show?
My first comedy show was an improv show at a club in Chicagoland called the Comedy Shrine, and we did what was called the Who's Line show, which is very similar to the Who's Line Is It Anyway show, but it was an adult themed show, so it was kind of naughty, which I really loved, being able to kind of go work blue as they call it, and yeah, that was a nerve wracking experience because my mom and my grandmother were in the audience, and I had to do a pretty inappropriate comedic sketch. And knowing that my mom and grandmother were there, it was like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this, you know, adult themed joke in front of them. But it was, you know, I got through it. That's all part of it. But it was fun. I loved it.
Yeah. What about where was your first official on stage musical performance at, and how did you feel going into that first musical performance?
Well, as an independent, you know, musician or singer, I mean, I grew up singing in church, and like I said, we would do festivals and stuff like that. So as far back as I can remember, I've been performing and singing in school plays and singing solos. But you know, like my band, when I first put my band, the Slipstream, together, our first gig was at a place in Bolingbrook, Illinois, I think it was, and it was a club called Two Rivers, It was a bar. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a bar show. And it was, I think I was like 19, 20 years old. And it was just that great experience of my band's here. We were going to play these songs that we wrote and we're going to, play for the crowd. And it was a great night. One of my, I can remember every bit of it. It was such a great experience.
Yeah.
And I got time for like maybe one more question and then I got to bounce.
All right. Yeah. So, uh, my last question would be: do you have any advice for me to become a wrestler?
Well, I think we definitely covered that. I mean, I think you kind of already have a game plan, right? You're gonna do the school in Green Bay, which I think is a great idea. But like I said earlier, don't stop at just one school. Get as much training as you can at that school, and then broaden your horizons and go off and learn from other people. And if he does what I expect him to do, he'll bring in other people to do workshops and stuff like that. So just that's probably going to cost you extra money, but spend the money. We call these things an investment, right? It's if you care about it enough, you need to invest in yourself. And there's no better place to spend your money than on things that make you better. So even to this day, I don't care how good I am or how professional I am or how much experience I have. If I have the opportunity to learn from someone who I admire, who also does what I want to do, I'll spend the money and I'll sit and I'll listen to their classes or their workshops or their master classes or whatever. So definitely do that. Don't be closed-minded to anybody, even if it's somebody who you're like, I don't think that I really liked that individual's work. Doesn't matter. They may still say something that'll snap something in your mind, and then you can take those tools and you want to have a giant keychain of keys that you can unlock with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing you go down that path. And now, now that we know each other, I'm definitely going to keep an eye out and I'll definitely love to see it. And if I'm ever at a GLCW show and you're there, come up and say hi.
Yeah. I didn't even know you were at the GLCW Blizzard Brawl, and until afterwards, you posted something, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh man, I missed
Yeah. I was sitting up
seeing
on
you
the
there."
stage, like right behind, Chris Van Fleet. So if you saw him, I was
Ah,
right by him. Yeah. Actually, I think I was behind Cash Flow's merch table. I think is where I was at by that point. But we were also there
okay.
filming, so
Oh,
you're
okay.
you might even see yourself in the film. You never know if you were in the
Yeah,
crowd.
yeah, because I was right in front of that area,
Okay,
right in front row of that area. So
well then you'll probably see yourself if that footage makes it to the film. Yeah, I don't know what's going to make it in the final cut, but we'll see.
sweet, that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
And I can't thank you enough for taking your time out to do this interview. It was a pleasure to have you
It
on
was
here.
it was an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'd love to come back someday down the road. And it was awesome meeting you. I think you're a totally cool dude, and I can't wait to listen to the rest of your show. And I see all the other people you got coming on. I can't wait to hear those. So good stuff, man.
Yeah, thank you, and you as well. And I hope you have a good show with all the shows you have coming up and stuff.
Oh yeah, we should probably talk about that before I go. So if you're going to be in Illinois, Al Snow and I are going to do tag team comedy at Batavia, the Comedy Vault in Batavia, Illinois, Sunday, April 28th. And then in May, I want to say it's May 11th, we're going to be at the West Bend Theater in West Bend, Wisconsin. So you should definitely come and see that show. Tickets are
Okay.
available now. And then in June, if you're in the St. Augustine, Florida area, we're going to be at the River City WrestleCon that Friday night. I want to say it's June. I think it's June 6th, maybe June 6th or June 7th. I don't know whatever that Friday night is on that weekend. We'll be doing our tag team comedy show, and that show is darn near almost sold out. So if you haven't gotten tickets yet, grab those. Yeah, and then you can find me anywhere doing my stuff at davidvoxmullen.com. And you can find me on all social media at David Vox Mullen, and I'm everywhere.
Yeah, so I'll definitely have to check out the West Bend, Wisconsin one for sure.
Yeah, we'd love to
Because
have you.
So Al is going to be there too.
Yeah. So Al and I do our show. It's called Tag Team Comedy with Al Snow and David Vox Mullen, and it's he and I just doing stand up. Um, I come out and I do about 10, 15 minutes of comedy, and then I bring Al up, and then he does the majority of the show with me. So he and I are together. Um, and if you'd like to get a look at that, if you are familiar with the Premier streaming app, the Premier Wrestling streaming app, you can find our. We filmed one of our specials at Zany's in Chicago, and last year, so you could see our special if you have the Premier streaming app. You can see it for free, and it's called Tag Team Comedy with Al Snow and David Vox Mullen, and it's exclusively available at the Premier streaming app right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope to see you come to like Marinette or Peshtigo sometime for a comedy show.
Yeah, if there's a comedy venue anywhere near there, let me know. I'll come out there.
Yeah, there's UTL that I could have get in contact with you to book you because they do comedy shows. So
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to do it. I would totally do it in a heartbeat. Just let me know. Wisconsin's easy to get to from Chicago.
yep. All right. Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
You as well. Thanks for having me, man. Have a great night.
Yep.
All
See
right.
you.
See ya.